nice, what a lovely, caring group of people we have that take care of our pipes and our plumbing and this, that, and the other. And then, just like most of us, she totally forgot about the card. Well, about a week later, she came home from work, and there, taped to her door, was another card. And she opened it again, and read, "Merry Christmas from the custodial staff." Second notice. Did y'all get one of those in your newspaper, kind of? I did. I had it in my blue little paper that covers it up from the rain, you know. December is described as a time of overindulgence. It's a time of excess, and there's too much shopping, and there's too much eating, and there's too much drinking, and there's too much self-gratification. It becomes all about us. And each person, all of us, search for happiness in our own way. And many people believe that the more stuff they can accumulate and pile up and amass, the happier their life will be. John Rainey will tell you I was that way, I think, because he helped me move 6 months ago. He knew how much stuff I had. Tammy, Merlin, we won't go there, but if you ever move, you figure out how much stuff is there. You know, but the problem is, as we search, we figure out that this stuff doesn't make us happier. Things get old quickly. Shopping is enjoyable for some people, but the purchase that I or you make today may get old by tomorrow. You know, if money can buy happiness, it's going to be a very short-lived happiness. And if you think about it, it's going to have to be continually what? Replenished. You got to refill it with more and more stuff. Well, throughout the faith journey that you and we're all on, God is leading us toward a deeper, a more meaningful spirituality that doesn't get old. And that spirituality doesn't get stale. And it's a spirituality where we can find peace and true joy. But isn't it strange? I find it very curious that at all times of the year, sometimes I find myself, sometimes we find ourselves just a little bit too busy for God. I'll have more time in January, God. Hang on. Hang on. I'll get to you then. You know, we put it to the side. And spirituality and worship will have to wait in my life and sometimes in yours for a time that's a little more convenient. Well, things don't change a whole lot. In the time of the prophet Zephaniah, the people of Judah had forgotten in their lives to make time for worship. They had become caught up in the cultures of foreign nations, and they no longer practiced a worship or a lifestyle that was pleasing to God. And the prophet Isaiah does three things. Not Isaiah, Zephaniah, I'm sorry. The prophet Zephaniah does three things. He proclaims judgment. He proclaims judgment. And at the same time, he calls for a new moral and a new religious order. But at the third time, in the same breath, same sentence, he tells the people to rejoice. Now I want you to look at me, people. Smile. Just smile. That's all I ask. I want you to hear me. I'm talking about rejoicing. The prophet's tools are not hammers and screwdrivers, but the prophet, whether it's a minor prophet like Zephaniah or whether it's a major prophet like Isaiah or Jeremiah, what are their tools? Words. That's the tool of a prophet. And they're not ordinary, smooth words, words that are easy to understand and words that are easy to dismiss, but the words of a prophet are sharp, and they're divinely inspired. iron, and they're sharp like a two-edged sword. And with these type of words, Zephaniah announces to the people God's intentions of what he wants to do, and he challenges the people about their apathy. And he challenges them about their complacency. And he challenges them about their priorities. And which comes first? Doing what the world says and other cultures, or doing what I say in my time? He announces that in their distress will be turned at some point to rejoicing, because their oppressors will be overthrown. And the great news to the people of Israel was a new king is going to come to the throne of David. Hang on to that thought, because that king coming to the throne of David is who? Jesus. That's who we're talking about. And that Zephaniah also underscores the importance of external, outward, visible expressions of faith. Formal worship to us, here we are today in the midst of formal worship, is a means for us to increase our awareness of God's presence, not just on Sunday morning at 11 o'clock, but in every area of our life. External, obvious, outer acts of worship proceed from the strong faith that you have. And not only do the acts of worship proceed from your faith, but your obedience to Christ comes from that strong faith. Your desire to live righteously comes from that strong faith. Your desire to do justice and see justice done comes from that strong faith. And Zephaniah sees a day, a new day, when God will purify the speech of the people so that, did you hear his words? So that all of them may call on the name of the Lord. Now, sometimes that word judgment gets a really bad rap. It has a bad connotation. I'm a little bit afraid of judgment, and I am, because I can fool you, and you can fool me, but ain't none of us fooling God. And one of these days, we're all going to stand there, and he's going to say, Bill, Lloyd, John, and we're going to have to say, yes, sir. But, you know, it's not about fear, and it's not about trembling when we talk about judgment. Judgment is not about destruction. It's not about punishment. But judgment is about redemption. Judah and the other nations are judged. Bill and other Christians are judged so that God can gather us in. So that God can make us humble. And so that we will call on the name of the Lord and know beyond any shadow of a doubt that He and He alone is worthy of our worship. And that without Him we are nothing. That is the prophetic hope that accompanies anything you talk about when you talk about salvation. Zephaniah says there's going to be a time of sorrow when Jerusalem is going to be conquered and captured by the Babylonians. And if you know anything about the Babylonians, you don't want anything to do with them. They were not nice people. Trust me. And he says the people of Israel will be driven from their homes. They'll be driven from their cities. They'll be driven from their countries. And they'll be driven into a foreign country. And they're going to be deep in sorrow in far, far away Babylon. But even before that captivity comes about, before it begins, Zephaniah invites God's people to rejoice, because even with all that out in front of them, there's salvation is near. No matter what we face in front of us, our salvation is near. And the faith of just a few people back then, and in 2015, the faith of just a few people will result in the change and in the transformation of so many. And when that happens, rejoicing is going to follow. The third Sunday in Advent traditionally is called Rejoicing Sunday, joy, as we remember and we give thanks to God for all of the great gifts. Now, imagine old Zephaniah. And I say old Zephaniah. I don't know how old he was. He might have been 23. I just think of the prophets as being older. Anyway, imagine Zephaniah and the people of God celebrating. And God's right there in their very midst, and they're all singing. And they're dancing in the streets. And God is singing louder than anybody else. Now, I hope you get a picture there that might be a little bit different to you, because I thought about this. As I worked on this message, I've really never had a picture of God dancing in the streets. I've never had a picture of God singing and celebrating. And yet, why shouldn't he? Why shouldn't God sing and celebrate? We just sang happy birthday to Pat. I bet God was singing. Because if there's a singer, there it is. He's going to sing. He's going to sing to Floyd. He's going to sing to all of us. Why? Because he made you and he loves you. And one of these days, friends, one of these days, he's going to wrap his arms around you and he's going to say, you're home. You are home. And when that happens, that's going to be the biggest, most joyous celebration of all. Did you hear Paul? You know, he echoes Zephaniah's command to rejoice. And Paul says this when he's in jail. Let me tell you, if I'm down at 201 Poplar, I am not going to be rejoicing. I just will tell you right now. But Paul's a better man than I am. And Paul says while he's in jail, rejoice in the Lord. Again, I will say rejoice. Now, that's an odd statement coming from somebody in jail and who thinks he may be about to lose his life. Paul tells us that God is nearby. Paul tells us that Christ is going to come again. And that when he comes, he will bring joy and peace that passes all human understanding. And when that peace spreads across the land, what goes with it? Joy. True happiness. The season we're in the midst of is all about peace. And it's all about hope. And it's all about joy. And those commodities today are in real short supply in our world. And I'm not just talking about the absence of conflict when we talk about peace. I'm not just talking about hoping that when I go to Kroger and give that lady $2 and she gives me a lottery ticket back, I can retire. That's hope. You know, that's ill-founded hope. You know, I'm not talking about happiness when I get an $87 tax refund back. I'm talking about joy that's deep, that can only come from knowing Jesus Christ. And the only way we're going to know that is when we have that harmonious relationship between us as the created and Him as the Creator. And when we have that relationship, then automatically we have this deep and unwavering loyalty and allegiance and love to His Son, Jesus Christ, who gave everything for us. The coming Messiah for them was believed to be an economic liberator. But think about Ebenezer Scrooge and all the Scrooges in the world.